Hi, everyone. Welcome tonight. Thank you for joining us for the BFA Thesis Conversations. All right, please, and this is our second BFA Thesis Conversations event. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Jamie Austin, Director of Exhibitions and Public Programs at CCA. The BFA Senior Thesis Conversations are live virtual events where graduating students from CCA's Fine Arts program publicly share their capstone work. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to the faculty, to the staff, to the family and friends who are here to help us celebrate work by 5 wonderful students. So tonight we will be learning from and celebrating Michonne Sanders from the Painting and Drawing program, Sungjun Park from Painting and Drawing, Rabeeah Ali, who's an individualized major, Kirra Teal Helfritsch from Jewelry and Metal Arts and also Sculpture, but tonight she'll be focusing on Jewelry and Metal Arts, and Juan Huerta from the Printmaking program. The students will be presenting in that order, and each student will be introduced by a CCA faculty member. I'm also happy tonight to introduce the 2 respondents who have joined us to share their thoughts, their questions, and their insights with the presenting students. We have Layla Weafer, an artist, writer, educator, and curator based in Oakland, who received an MFA from Mills College. Weafer's practice considers the complexity of phenomenological Blackness through video, installation, printmaking, and lecture performances. Weafer is also the curator of the excellent New Labor Movements film series at the McAvoy Foundation, which I highly recommend. We also have with us tonight Kevin Chen, who's an artist, independent curator, and educator at San Francisco State University and Mills College, and who currently serves as resident curator at the Fine Arts Gallery at San Francisco State University, faculty at SF State and Mills College, and a member of Recology's Artist in Residency Program Advisory Board, and also Root Division's Curatorial Committee. Since we have a packed agenda tonight, we're going to rely on our respondents for questions, and we'll only be able to take audience questions at the end of the event if time allows. If you have any urgent questions or thoughts, please drop them into the chat and we'll be monitoring that. And now let's begin the program. I'd like to welcome faculty member Kim Ono, who will introduce Michonne Sanders. Thank you.
Good evening. I really have the pleasure of introducing an amazing student and artist and soon to be colleague. And I also want to thank very much Layla and Kevin for joining us. We really appreciate you guys being here and paying attention to our students. Michonne Sanders was born in Michigan, but raised in the southern city of Tallahassee, Florida, an upbringing that has deeply influenced her art making. After not creating art professionally or personally for over 2 decades, she decided to fulfill the childhood dream of attending art school and began her journey at Berkeley City College and continued at CCA, where she is about to finish her BFA in this semester. Michonne draws deep into the experience and inspiration from her family members and notions of the history of revolution. This year, she won a national award in painting, the OXA Prize, which we are all very excited about. And I also want to say that Michonne's work is also viewed at the Albany Bulb, where you see the memorial for those who have been killed by police violence. Without further ado, Michonne Sanders, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Thumbs up. All right, thank you so much. Before I get too deep into this, I just want to say a thank you to everybody that's joining us tonight, and especially to my partner, Sarah, my sons, Ezra and Caden, and my family who supported me through this journey. Like Kim said, this has been a lifelong dream, 30 plus years in the making. I said I was going to do it by 40 and I made it. I turned 40 this year, and so here I am. A special thanks to the faculty, the painting faculty at CCA, who has been my backbone my entire journey. Brian Keith Thomas, David Huffman, Kim, Linda, everybody, and my studio family there. When COVID cut us off, we still kept kept up with each other, and that was super important, and it helped me keep going and helped me get to where I am right now. So with that, for the last time, my name is Michonne Sanders, and I am a painting and drawing major, and I'm a senior graduating this fall. So I will share my screen. So they decided to start out with a facts page. So here's some facts about me. I was born in Michigan. I was raised in Tallahassee, also part of the time in Georgia, Savannah. I do love root beer floats, and I don't like to share them. My favorite movie since I was a little kid is Howard the Duck, and that is absolutely accurate. I do grimace most of the time. So that is that's sort of me in a nutshell. But yeah, I grew up in the South, and I have a lot of Southern sensibilities that I've carried with me, even though I've lived in the Bay Area for almost 20 years. I have a strong sense of family, a strong sense of community, a strong sense of hospitality, and I love to give. And so let's move on to the next slide. These are my parents. I got a lot of who I am from my mom, who is my hero to this day. My dad was a tough military guy. He passed away some time ago, but he's with me, and he appears a lot in my work. So I know I'm definitely working through some stuff there. Moving on to some influences, and I kind of want to break it up a little bit. I have sort of three major sources of influences. In the art world, right now, I'm looking at contemporary artists like Noah Davis, the way that he handles, the mundanity of Blackness and of everyday life mixed with surrealism is just so moving and so powerful. The way he handles paint and the way he turns the canvas into a psychological space is something that I try to draw into my work, as well as Henry Taylor, who makes these very beautiful narratives, just active, alive scenes, often that are posed. He doesn't use photography very often. He has folks come and pose for him, and he really captures emotion in a way that, I hope to bring forth in my work, and I've let influence my work at my time at CCA and my time as an artist. Moving on, also Bisa Butler, who is a fabric artist. She's one of my favorite contemporary artists, and I love the way that she handles color and pattern and takes a moment like the four little girls and reminds us that those four little girls were beautiful and had life and were full of life. And Kirra Walker, who with very little information is able to give us so much. It is so powerful. And the first time I ever saw one of her pieces in person, I was moved to tears because the stories that she's able to tell and the message that she delivers is so powerful. I'm also, the second sort of part of my influences is the revolution. Like, I love the idea of fighting back. I grew up in Tallahassee where, I didn't learn about the Black Panthers. I didn't learn that Rosa Parks actually worked for the NAACP. We were taught that she was just a lady who was tired and sewed, and didn't want to get up. And so at my time in CCA, I've really focused a lot of my studies on learning about these pieces of Black history that I felt like, I was robbed of in my youth, in my grade school education. The Black Panthers, for one, the Combahee River Collective, Black feminism, Audre Lorde. These powerful women doing all of these things that history sort of forgot about, and left out, or just don't talk about because they weren't white or male, or just male, period. And so that led me into a show I did recently at the Right Window Gallery, and I really wanted to salute these women, and it all sort of happened around the same time of the suffrage anniversary and all of that. And there was so much discussion about, women's suffrage, and I thought about, what about the Black women? Because Black women didn't get the same right to vote for a long time. And women like Shirley Chisholm, don't get the recognition until a Kamala Harris happens, and then we realize, oh wait, there was someone there that did this before. And Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman elected to Congress. And that was a huge deal in 1968. Fannie Lou Hamer, another woman who worked with Black women's suffrage, she fought hard, was jailed and beaten, and history is forgotten. And so I wanted to pay homage to her and remember, the contributions that she gave to all of us. And also the same with Ella Baker. And these paintings I did all this year. And Ella Baker is such a hero because you think about grassroots organizing and you think about, contributions, and you think about the people who are typically behind the microphones are these powerful academics and these big voices and, these booming personalities. And Ella Baker was all of that, but she was behind the scenes. She was the one that was, organizing the people on the ground and getting the word out. And she's a hero, just like all the rest of them. And earlier in my time at CCA, I actually did this glass piece. I like to do glass work from time to time, and I did this etched glassware set. And I wanted to sort of play with the juxtaposition of class and, the idea of a dinner set, but put some graffiti on it or tag on it, and what was the message that I would want to put on a fancy glassware set. And I thought about Shirley Chisholm, and I thought about when she said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And so over all of these pieces are parts of that quote. And when I did this Right Window show, I decided to put them all together and exhibit them as an installation. And so you have all of these beautiful, powerful women, and then this notion of, here's their table, there's some extra chairs, let's have a seat. And thinking in terms of, powerful women, beautiful women, strong women, I think about the women that I grew up around, my mom, my grandmother, and these memories of our family and seeing photos and, not knowing all the stories. And fortunately, my mom has a ton of photos that she's, just so generously shared with me, which has become the basis of the reference work for my work. And so starting with sort of images like these portraits, I wanted to reimagine them and think about them in, where would I want to put them now? My grandmother's not with us and hasn't been for a while, but what adventures would she want to have, and how would her image want to live in the world? And so I started to make these very graphic, giant portraits of, well, the one on the left isn't that large, but these large portraits of the fellow on the left, Willie Mobley, that's my grandfather. The fellow on the right, Arthur Brown, is my great-great-grandfather. And I started to just memorialize them and think in terms of leaving their image and where do I want them to go out and be in the world and live. And it was also, and I had a chance to make a scrapbook for my son, a way to document his family members who he's, not going to meet, but he gets to experience them in this new and different way. And, the same thing I played with a little bit of, neon lighting and different paint textures. And Arthur Brown is another, figure that appears a lot in my work. I've painted him multiple times and will probably continue to paint him multiple more times. But I really wanted to, memorialize these folks and think about their place in my history and where their place is going to be in my future, my son's future. And so moving on to this leads me to where I am currently, and I'll read this. This is my artist statement. I create paintings that are representational of my experiences of Blackness and the importance of the space and time in between. Using family photos as my primary reference material, I focus on the depiction of Black life, not the spectacle or its aftermath, but the moments of transition or pause, where next moves are being negotiated, connections are being made, and thoughts are being collected. As a Black person in America, I find myself inundated either with imagery of the world happening to the Black community or imagery of our resilience and response to those happenings. My work is driven by the desire to remember those moments in between, where we as a people are just existing, not trying to be, but actually being. Those are the moments that validate our humanity and our existence. And so I started to move into looking at the canvas as a psychological space, and how can I incorporate multiple figures into a space and tell the story of these in-between moments, these sort of pauses or silences in between the spectacle and the aftermath. And this was the first one I did in 2019 that really just kind of got me on that path of thinking about signifiers and thinking about, if I'm going to paint Blackness, what do I want it to be? What story do I want to tell? How do I want to represent it? It moves me forward to this painting that Kim mentioned. This won the first place in the 2020 AXA Art Prize. Very, very proud of that achievement. It is a labor of love, and it stands as my favorite painting to this day that I've painted. The idea of these figures sort of existing in this space, and it's that moment in between. The happening has happened, the service is over. We're all heading to the next thing, which is the repast, which is to follow. And catching people in those moments of pause is really, really important. And the figure to the right with her thoughts, the figure who's my mom in the middle, probably saying something she doesn't have any business if I know my mom, but and then the figure in the front just sort of fixing her hair. Everybody's just going on to the next thing, and I love to capture that. In here we have, I told you that the last time, and I'm really proud to say this painting was part of the virtual group show that was curated by Genevieve Danyard, who's an amazing, amazing artist. And this was selected, this happened in 2020, the show just came down, but I was really proud of representing, these images of the Black body in a way that is just, it's not violent, but it's not victimized. It's just us being and existing in our own space. And the same here, playing a little bit more with confronting the viewer. I think about figuration is, how do we paint, where do we put people in the canvas, but where also are we as the viewer implicated? Like, where can you put yourself in it? And that's super important to me, that when you see my work, I want you to be able to feel like you might be sitting across this table. Whatever was just said might give you either the figure on the left's reaction or the figure on the right's reaction.
And Michonne, just so you know, that's time. So if you could wrap up, I hate to jump in, but thank
No,
you.
it's okay. Thank you. Thank you. I thought I was going to go way under, so that's even better. All right. To jump ahead a little bit. So yeah, these are the most recent works that I've completed. Sort of like the culmination of all these ideas put together. I've got this. This is the most figures I've ever put in one work, and I'm super proud of the way it came out. I love the interaction with the figures that are confronting you. I love the cans. It reminds me of my childhood, just this snapshot of something that's just kind of happening. And then this is my most recent work, just completed a few days ago. I'm super proud of it. It's called Kings Island. These are my uncles. I love showing these guys because they're, they were back in the 80s, these were the girl dads. My cousins and I, these are my dad and their dads. And so we had a lot of moments with these guys where it's just like, hey, and they were clowning around and just being themselves. And so I wanted to capture that. I know I'm running over, so thank you guys, everybody, for watching or listening, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I think you're muted.
You're muted, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Michonne, for that wonderful presentation. We'll have a presentation by Sungjun Park now, and then we will have time to respond to both works by these great painting and drawing students. So thank you for that great presentation. Now I'd like to introduce Kim Ano, who's going to be introducing our next artist presenting.
Sungjun Park was born in Seoul, Korea, and he was college educated in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has been grappling with two cultures. His work grasps with issues of cultural identity, sexuality, and trauma. He is inspired by popular and indie music in Seoul, Korean ancient history, and Buddhist iconography. Sungjun has worked diligently across mediums, including animation, painting, and drawing. Without further ado, our own Sungjun Park.
Okay, thank you for introducing myself. My background. Here's my presentation. So, firstly, I getting a lot of getting fascinating about four elements about just the music and fashion and the Korean culture and heritage and animation and cartoon and the artists and the writers. So the most favorite artist is the Jang Sung-up, who was making the this kind of art and also this kind of things. She's really kind of impressive thing is the details part is really kind of really details on it and also expressing about really directly express and also the writer first book is the good art. It was really good way to understanding about just the mixing together with the American perspective and and Chinese work, Chinese modern Chinese history. It was really good ways to understanding about this thing. So for the artist statement, I want to, want to, I want my art to able to mirror like the reflecting all of me and also not only for the appearance but myself. I spent 6 years to studying for how to expressing myself and most effectively. Then I got a fasc- fasc- satisfying that I could complete the painting that reflect me through the four element pop artists and Korean traditional art and craft, color and non-color, and scribble. I must write as if they are the end of the painting, the blunt writing, bold writing sometimes became the garment or wore or flew down the figure body. Inside there's two egos who want to build the painting like a well-made building and a street philosophy who write a history without the filtering by the painting the wall on the finishing the building. So the first drawing about just I made it was the big drawing painting on when I was studying the community college and the future designing to it was the first time to I just finishing about just to studying the community college and also the first time to studying the American. So I just expressing about just my background history about just technology things and designing things. And so I just the first step to understand on to showing about just what I want to express. And the stranger, it was 2017. It was the first final drawing to making about just from the CCA that I want to expressing about the differences about just feeling when I studying the America. So I want to expressing myself to stranger and inside of them it was my perspective of just American person with like a diversity diverse about just animal just harmonizing. So yeah. So and 2018 I starting to studying about just expressing about just my desire and also just facing about just my just the figure things. So I just using just a model who's a pop artist, pop just the fashion models and also combining about just the bamboo ink in the Korean traditional painting, just combining about just all together and showing about just myself. And this is was emotional outburst on the acrylic combining first time to expressing about just thinking about just what it was the ideals and the emotions the differences. So I expressing about just ideal with through this rainbow and the sorry, the emotion will be the rainbow and ideal is showing about just the ceramic patterns on just the right corner on it. And yeah, and this is the painting on just combining about just color pencils and just ink and just pencil, which is showing about just the combining about the studying about just the women's and men and the ideas and emotional things through this just a kissing. So at first time I was trying to just the thinking about just so what it was the differences between the pop art and this artist differences. So I there was there was a processing about this work. The work is a processing about the work. So I starting about writing about sentence on here. And yeah, I'm studying about just some kind of work with small size 8 18 8 by 11 inches or sometimes yeah. And also I starting just to writing about just the sentence through the sketching and I getting a satisfying about myself. So I starting to blushing and just breaking about just the painting like a graphic art graphidia. So and reading about just the work. So this work is I just made it in 2018, but I changing like this. So I changing the self-portrait and also the changing the pose and showing about the ambiguity about just the my sexual just identity about just the man masculinity and the feminist and also the the glowing about just writing about the sentence and also yeah and studying about just the patterns on just between the Korean the clothes and just the clothes and the whole patterns yeah and this is the painting which is made in 2019 which is the size is 63 inches by 43 for one for each. And this is showing that was a really kind of I was facing about just a bad memory through this art. So I at that moment I was kind of emotionally just kind of depressed and also homesick is and also kind of trouble with um the friends relationship. So it was a kind of showing about just corruptions about between the past, present, and also future. And by writing about just sentence with the black and white, is showing about that I tried to breaking about just my old technique style and then just drawing about just draw just things really fastly. Okay, and also in this work, I was starting about just writing about, learning about just concrete poetry, and then I'm writing about this poetry that really well representing about at that moment, 2019. It was writing about just the reason why I hating about just the blue sky. It was so kind of really kind of bothering about just the California's the really clean blue skies value to me. So yeah.
And you're at time, Sungjun, so you can just wrap it up. Thank you.
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you. And at that moment, I caring about just 2010 as 2010 years, I starting about just the kind of representing about me and also more studying about how to expressing about myself more gracefully. So studying about these small pages and then like that, so writing about this poetry or yeah, and also studying about this or presenting about just giving to someone's by studying about just Korean folk painting. And then I starting of I pro it this is processing work, so it's not done yet, but it was a point of showing about that the the, the Buddhism painting kind of that I getting inspired it and then writing about the details on it and studying about the details and then adding about just some kind of 3D art and then to showing about the what to allow to the men's to harmony and also men's the sexual sexual there's homosexual love or something through these the religions. Okay, and this is a work is showing about the some does my passion about the pop art and also showing about this the ambiguity about just between just ideals and the ideals and emotions and also the females and males, but it's still processing. Yeah. And this is where it's just finished that writing about just totally differently to changing about just the background and the scrapping. I writing about just the whole sentence on the background and then the scrapping about with the red colors, the crayon and drawing something. So by reading about the scales and I showing about the the rumors or the gossip is really kind of intoxicating to me and then expressing about that and also to drawing about just really this cut off the hairs is representing about just my cut off the identity of just national or just my personal things through this. Okay, thank you. It's done.
Thank you so much, Sungjun, for your presentation. And now we are going to have invite the respondents to share thoughts about both Michonne and Sungjun's work, both of our painting and drawing students. And Layla, can I invite you to go first and share some thoughts or reflections?
Yeah, absolutely. I love both of your work. Thank you for sharing it with us. Michonne, I see a lot of things happening in your work. I love that how the figures are frozen in these micro expressions, and rather than capturing like grand gesture, you're really focusing on transition and pause. And I think there's an imminence in the stillness or some kind of anticipation happening in that moment. And there's, you talked about mundanity, and I think it's interesting because even in a perceived mundanity, there's like a tension in body position and the face muscles of Black folks, and in all of the nonverbal communication in the resting positions. And I think that is kind of a through line that I see in a lot of the work, even in your dinner table, like the etched glassware and the absence of the body and the absence of like the bodies who would be inhabiting that dinner table. Like the question that comes to mind is like, what conversation is unfolding at that dinner table? It's kind of a really charged space, and there's a lot of language and conversation in the absence of all of those people. And another thing in terms of mundanity, I feel like a lot of the colors in your paintings are very, very bright, vibrant. So I'm wondering if you associate or if you ascribe certain colors to specific moments in time that you capture, and how you attach color to these different moments. And also, how would you describe the cultural and possibly coded language happening in these snapshots?
When it comes to color, I really, honestly, a lot of it is aesthetic. I like to pick colors that make Black and brown skin look beautiful, and bright colors kissed by the sun, really just illuminate black and brown skin in a way that, dark colors just don't do it. And also it's the opportunity to sort of draw the viewer in and then force them to focus on what's going on, as opposed to, oh, look, there's trees in the background and what's that figure back there doing? But no, I want you to focus on, interacting with what's happening right in front of you. And that's why I try to incorporate, just little signifiers here and there, little nuances. Everybody's auntie had that purse at some point, and I feel like I paint for a very specific audience, and with that, a lot of those folks pick up on those things, and like nothing makes me feel better than somebody saying like, "Oh my God, that looks like the church building that had, I remember Czech sodas and whatnot." So it's super important to have the figuration be relatable, in terms of Blackness and in terms of how we exist in the world. And there's, not everybody's up, ready to strike.
Right, and I realize I asked you like a bunch of questions at once.
I know, I was trying to remember all of them.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, speaking of that, like going back to that question of like what conversations or what for you is present in those moments of transition or pause. And I feel like the mundanity is still a charged space. I don't even know if I can imagine like Black folks in a resting position and it not still be holding a lot of like conversation and language,
Mm-hmm.
coded language specifically. What exists in that space for you?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's thinking about next moves and pausing, and I feel like those spaces are where we are our absolute purists, because we're not focusing on the outside world. We're not things aren't happening, things aren't occurring around us necessarily that are affecting us. It's just us negotiating whatever's the next step. You know what I mean? Like, it's just us figuring out how we all move forward together or individually. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, let me jump in here too. Congratulations to both Sungjun and Michonne for graduating. Michonne, especially congratulations for staying the course and living out your dreams. There's a really nice precedent with the painter Amy Sherald, who didn't really start achieving success until she was in her late 30s, early 40s. Your work is beautiful. I am looking forward to hearing more about you, which will definitely be happening. Congratulations on the prize. That's pretty amazing. The panelists and the jurors, I was just looking at who was on the panel this year. Eugenie Tsai, who's a curator at the Brooklyn Museum, Lauren Haynes, who's the main contemporary curator at the Crystal Bridges Museum of Contemporary Art in Arkansas. So I hope that in the 20 years of pursuing your dream, that you're ready to grab it right now, because it is going to be coming your way. I'm also really curious to see in which direction your painting goes. Some of the earlier work that you showed us, you very much worked in a methodology of grisaille. These just kind of monochromatic tones. The backgrounds, as we see in your studio there as well, these beautiful, vibrant, monochromatic colors. But the most recent painting that you showed us, the one where you said it was the most figures that you've painted to date so far, there's a beautiful texture of the walls in that room that you painted. And I can definitely see the influence of Bisa Butler and other artists who are potentially working with textiles and that kind of texture being incorporated into your work. I think it's adding this very interesting, tangible sense of depth to the painting in a way that I'm excited for the way this is going to progress for you. I had a question that I also want to then I'll jump over to Sungjun and then Layla can follow up after me. But Michonne, what is the largest that you have painted so far in terms of dimension?
6 feet by 4 feet.
Have you ever painted outside in terms of mural work?
I've painted some sort of big concrete slabs out at the Albany Bowl, but they're thinking about them now. I think they're like 7 feet by 4 feet, so not too much bigger than my normal canvas size, but I want to go big.
Whoops.
And because like the scale that they are now, 3 feet by 4 feet, is really effective for the conversation that I think I'm trying to have. And but yes, that is definitely something that I'm interested in, is going bigger.
Great. And I think you're already enmeshed in a really supportive community of amazing artists at CCA with Kim Anno and Brian Keith Thomas, David Huffman. Looking forward to hearing more about your work, Michonne.
Thank you so much.
Sungjun, congratulations as well. I had some really interesting questions. In your initial statement, you had mentioned these 4 elements of pop, of traditional Korean painting, and I forget the other 2. One was scribble. What is that? What is the overall genres of those in reference to for yourself?
I think I was more interested about just many kinds of things when I was young. So I kind of combining about mixed together. I'm really kind of want to combining all kind of things on my painting. So I'm kind of might be grading.
And then you have an obviously love of pop music, yes?
Yes, it was really kind of give me just a lot of just inspired me. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of just kind of ideas from them. So and also from the I want to getting just ideas about just effect there through making their stages. So that's why.
Were many of the figures actual K-pop stars?
Might be the K-pop star or just the model from just a fashion show, or sometimes of myself, just a portrait, or could be just the fashion magazine or something like that.
Okay. I don't know, you probably know the group BTS. Most everyone in the world does.
Yeah, sure.
Have you heard about their Connect BTS project?
Yeah, the Love Yourself, you mean?
No, so they are commissioning public art throughout the world, and they're working with artists of such calibers as Tomas Saraceno as Anthony Bromley. It's a pretty phenomenal project that really introduces living contemporary artists to audiences that may not be a part of this world of fine arts. I would definitely look into that. There is a painter who is based in the Bay Area. He is a Tibetan painter who was actually trained as a traditional Tanka painter. The way that he has brought that style of traditional Tibetan Tanka painting into contemporary times is something that really made me think about when you showed us that sketch of the traditional Buddhist work in progress.
Mhm.
He was featured in a big show at the Asian Art Museum right before shutdown happened. Shirin Sherpa is his name. And I would highly recommend that you check him out in terms of influence of artists who are not only trained in a traditional kind of art form, but the way that they're able to bring it forward into the 21st century while maintaining the integrity of that form.
Thank you. And maybe Layla, we might have to have you save your thought for the end, because I do want to make sure we stay on time for the rest of our students presenting. But thank you, Layla and Kevin, for your reflections for these students. And let's all take a second to at least give a silent clap for Michonne and for Sungjun for their presentations. Thank you so much for all that you taught us through your time, and we really appreciate it. And now we'll move on with additional presentations. Our next graduating student is Rabeeah Ali, and I would like to invite CCA faculty member Aaron Gash to introduce Rabeeah.
Hi, everyone. It is such a pleasure to introduce you to Rabeeah Ali. Rabeeah is an individualized major who combines textiles and fiber arts and fashion into a practice that really embraces handwork and embroidery and natural dyes and sustainable materials. And moreover, her efforts combine the spiritual and the domestic by creating work that blends religious designs related to her faith and historical influences and cultural patterns into the personal. And she does this by thinking about the work in relation both to the lived spaces of the home and also the body. And I've worked with Rabeeah just this past semester, and the conversations that we've had around her work, around thinking about the way that her work is not just representative of her faith or representative of her ethical approach, but really an activation of those things into art as life and life as art. So I think you're going to be really excited to see her work. Please join me in welcoming Rabeeah Ali.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Jamie. I just want to thank everybody who is here from the bottom of my heart for just being present and joining us in this virtual kind of gallery space. And I also just want to thank my family. I'm in Atlanta, but I'm a Bay Area girl. And to my family in the Bay Area, I love you guys all. And I love all of you here as well. And so without further ado, I will share my screen. So a little bit about me is I was born in Chicago, Illinois, raised in the Bay Area, and I'm currently living in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm kind of a woman of the world. I've always had my mind set on fashion, but I've always had an unwavering love for animals and care for the environment. And I really just enjoy bringing together the technicality of garment making and the slow process of the textile arts. Through my work, I also combine various aspects of my personality, and which includes my American identity, my Indian heritage, and my Islamic faith into garments and homeware. And I focus on traditional methods of hand craftsmanship. And I really just allow my obsession with texture, drape, pattern and natural color just to run absolutely wild within my work. And so I'd love to begin by one of my recent works from 2019. And this was an homage to one of my most influential artists in my life. He's currently living today. He's an amazing, amazing, absolute backbone of my own personal practice. His name is Haji Noordin. He's from Beijing, China, and he has studied the Arabic calligraphic arts in Turkey and all over the world. And he also combines the traditional calligraphic styles of Arabic calligraphy and Chinese, traditional Chinese calligraphy. And he's actually created many of his own patterns and even like scripts and fonts of his own by unifying those two. And what I really, really love and admire about his work is just how he really embodies this cultural imperative that I try to uphold as a Muslim, in that there's such a universality in our faith. And I'm trying to really celebrate our diversity as human beings by combining those various aspects of my faith and my heritage and my identity. And so this, as you can see, this is him kind of making a custom piece for me. And in Arabic, this says, "Oh, my beloved." And I really wanted to kind of give him this homage by translating his work into fabric. And so you can see up in the top right corner here is a detail shot of one of my first embroidery pieces. And after this, I really just kind of took off with embroidery within my work and using that as like a new language for myself. The act of embroidery, the beautiful peacefulness and tranquility in the process of it, and just really the mindfulness, the intentionality, and the thoughtfulness that goes into every stitch, and how that can really create a work that stands out and speaks in volumes. This leads me to one of my first works, unifying textiles and my fashion design background. And I titled this Revival because what you see here is a garment that is, it has this architectural structure, yet it also has this very organic, free-flowing silhouette, which I have always loved designing throughout my time in the fashion program. And once I switched to Individualized, I was able to open the door of opportunity in terms of using my newfound love for embroidery, and also my yearning for taking a slower, more mindful practice and approach to garment making. And so I began by using recycled flax linen, which you'll see in my linen series. I've included about 2 pieces from my linen series in this presentation today. And I have about 3 more pieces as well, which will be up in my showcase that's coming up later this month. And what you see here is this garment that has been dyed with avocado pits, collected from a local restaurant, and we collaborated, and I was able to get their compost materials and use that to dye, and also using black tea leaf compost. And this pattern here that is embroidered onto the back of the garment is taken from a photo I had taken during my travels from a bottom view looking up at a dome. And I really just have begun to love etching memory into my work through the act of stitching. And this is something that I don't see this as just, garment making. I see this as fine art, because this is really something that, like a moment that it's like a timestamp almost, that I'm able to wear and like envelop my body in, and really just continue to carry this memory with me. Similarly, this is another piece, undyed, and this is a fuller length garment, more of a flowing silhouette as well. And this, the embroidery pattern that I chose to include on the back of this garment is a pattern that I took from my great-grandmother's, one of her shawls. And so I was really trying to reflect on my heritage, which I didn't really grow up with that, like being 100% in touch with that. And really through this piece, I felt like I was able to connect to my family members and mainly my great-grandmother through this practice, and also kind of reappreciating the beauty and craftsmanship of Indian patterns and the ornate nature that this tradition upholds. And here we are getting into my more recent homeware, which I really, for this thesis presentation and like my senior thesis show in general, I was really excited to be shifting the attention a little bit more onto the ornamentation of the home, and how through traditional methods of hand craftsmanship, we can ornament our home and breathe personality, our own personal personality into it through what we make with our own hands. And this is not something that, this is not just a traditional craft that, you know, I can do just because I have an interest in it. Historically, it was very common for people to pick up embroidery or woodworking or the ceramic arts. And this was something that was not just in arts, but it was a lived tradition. And I was really trying to kind of highlight how we can really bring these back. And we're in such an age of, you know, mass production, and we tend to kind of lose focus of the intentionality and the beauty and, you know, the hands who are making what we eat on, the hands that are making what we wear, the hands that are making, you know, what we see in our homes, the art as well. And this was, again, part of the home linen series, in which I created a linen tablecloth and a set of napkins, which were dyed in turmeric powder and Indian madder root. I love dyeing with turmeric powder, firstly because of the beautiful glowing radiant color that it creates, and secondly because turmeric is one of the most beautiful spices that we use in Indian cooking. And this is just something that I've always had such a fond memory of, you know, my mom like kind of throwing a dash of that into her food, and then the smell just being absolutely luscious, and the color transforming into this beautiful, beautiful glow, and kind of just like bringing that into my textile practice. Similarly, I began creating a couple of pillowcases. As you can see, there's some behind me right here. This one is titled Remembrance. This is really like a more intricate kind of Islamic pattern that I was really just tapping into. Again, this concept of imbibing this and imbuing this memory and travel and within my work, and creating that personality that I can see within my home, and keeping those kind of timestamps as a form of support that, you know, physically, like what does a pillow bring to someone? It provides support, it provides comfort, it provides warmth, and it can provide security. And that is really what, not just these patterns, but these memories and these concept of reusing fabric, this recycled linen, and the soft touch of the velvet pillow that it's stitched onto, and how those can bring about those kinds of thoughts. Similarly,
I have time if you want to start wrapping it up, Rabeeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Similarly, this is another image within that series. It's a similar looking pattern, but it's different at the same time. This one is, the concept for this one is kind of centered around the moon and that the presence of the moon. This is another piece, again, dyed with some natural colors. And I'd also just like to highlight a couple samples of compost dyes in which, so the left is dyed in blueberries, the middle is dyed in citrus peels. It's a very, very subtle but delicate, beautiful, like a very, very soft eggshell yellow almost, and the rightmost color being eucalyptus leaves. And I just wanted to close with my artist statement. I am a gatherer, storyteller, and designer. I collect concepts and inspiration from the world that I see and experience. My findings through travel, history, and relationships. I find inspiration in the artistry within nature, which is a precious example of how God ornaments the earth. My faith has taught me the importance of seeking beauty as a fundamental aspect of life. I also gain inspiration from the people I meet, animals, and nature, all of which are wonders of the earth. Therefore, it is fundamental that I center my work in sustainable practices using recycled and compost materials. God is beautiful and loves beauty. As human beings, we are individuals made of physical and spiritual complexities, and when woven together in their own unique patterns, these produce a tapestry of beautiful diversity. My intention throughout my artistic practice is to beautify whatever I can in this society that is losing touch with this reality. I seek to bring light to the techniques of hand craftsmanship through the traditional methods of natural dyeing, embroidery, block printing, screen printing, hand carving, hand illustrating, and handwriting as a way of underlining the beauty and variation that the human hand can bring about. Handwork creates layers of meanings and a flair and personality which mass production cannot, unique impressions in time that encapsulate the story of its journey. Each stain, stitch, stroke, mark, and movement are timestamps of those very moments that breathe into the work. Handwork is a process that takes determination, sincerity, and patience. I aspire to ground my work through intentional, mindful, and slow practices that allow both the artist and the viewer to interact with every piece in a way that is reflective of themselves, the environment, and its inhabitants. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for sharing your work with us tonight. That was lovely. Thank you. And now I would like to welcome back Erin Gash to introduce our next artist presenter.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Rabeeah. That was awesome. Next up, we have Kirra Helfridge. And Kirra can be a bit surprising because yes, while she is graduating this semester in jewelry and metal arts, she is also graduating next semester in sculpture. And her wide-ranging practice frequently explores and blurs the line between both of these disciplines. She's often creating work that is sculptural, that is wearable, and that is embodied. And she draws on themes related to social anxieties and social constructions, often grounding her work in commonplace materials that are evocative of both the built and natural environments. I've had the pleasure of working with Kirra over the past 2 semesters, and to see the way that Kirra approaches her materials and creating these really uncanny and idiosyncratic relationships between things like discarded fabrics and concrete and other situations is really quite extraordinary. So please join me in welcoming Kirra Helfridge.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Erin. That was really cool. It was nice. Thank you, everyone, for spending your night with us. It's really nice to have an audience for the hard work we've all been doing all semester. With that, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Great. Everyone can see that, I hope.
Yes, it looks great.
Great, thank you. Okay. Okay, there we go. So I grew up in Santa Cruz, California. I lived in the Redwoods with my family and was homeschooled as a young child. It influenced a lot of my childhood interactions by being surrounded by nature and spending most of my time using my imagination, most every endeavor. My whole life, I've always been a maker. teaching myself knitting, sewing, furniture building, tree fort creating, and trying to use any sort of found materials. I've always found inspiration in nature, whether it is the subtle colors of fallen leaves or textured and vibrant bark or wind blowing through dancing golden grass. Being a very internally anxious individual, nature has always offered a refuge for settling my thoughts and reflecting. Through my creative process, I constantly strive to recreate the colors and textures of these found in nature. One of the artists I chose to show as one of my influences is an artist I found a handful of years ago, Dorothy Caldwell. She's a Canadian textile artist who works in recreating maps from her memory of land that she's been to in the past through abstract design and these textile wall hangings. I find them simply gorgeous with the use of her colors that she uses, as well as the linear lines in the way that she dictates memory through a 3D object. Another artist that I included is one I've been introduced to recently, Nick Cave. He was a fiber sculptor, dancer, and performance artist. He's best known for his sound suits, many of which are these ornate full body costumes designed to rattle and resonate with the movement of the wearer. He connects with the anxieties and divisions of our time to the intimacies of the body. He uses textile, sculpture, and dance to represent these ideas. The sound suit removes race, gender, and class, allowing the viewer to look without bias upon these vehicles of empowerment. I really like his work as I'm working on pieces that are empowering as well. My artist statement. My work is the correlation of inhibitions one experiences and the physical transfiguration of processing those emotions. I create pieces for specific areas of the body where anxiety and self-hate form. Negative obsessions are turned into focused physical manifestation, where the experience of creating something wearable for that place on the body becomes a form of therapy. The processing of emotion is instigated by combining metalsmithing techniques with the construction of textile objects. I create a fantasy-like representation of what inhibits us, allowing the negative obsessions to become costumes, celebrating the transformation. The materials hold sentimental value, representing the negative and stagnant emotion which are repurposed into wearable items. The final pieces demonstrate unraveling the source of personal frustrations, then transforming them into extensions of the body. My creative practice focuses on an exploration and manipulation of traditional crafts and how they can be used together to create conversation. By integrating jewelry-making techniques with textile and sewing processes, along with fiber dyeing, raw edges create a tactile experience. My process accentuates the handmade by using large stitches with thread and fabricating cold connections to metal. The use of recycled materials and eco-friendly dyes and products dictate many aspects of my creative process. By working with materials that already exist, I am able to repurpose their lives by creating history through their memories. And with that, move into the first piece. This one is Mass, titled Mass, a mixed metal, textiles, and found materials. This piece was the first in my series and was born from the negativity I experienced looking at myself in the mirror every day. I knew it was all in my head, but I couldn't shake the lingering feeling of self-hate and doubt and wanting to hide my face. By working on this piece, it forced me to think about and process these thoughts and where they come from. For the exterior fabric of the head, I used my childhood blankie. No longer in service, this piece of woven fabric gave me comfort and wiped away many tears through my life. Unexpectedly, wearing this piece surrounds me with comfort and calms my mind. Next piece, we have Nail Biter, was made this year, mixed metals, textiles, nylon leggings. Growing up, I learned to knit in the dark. When my family would go see a movie in the theaters, I feared for my fingers. I would leave the movie, hiding my bleeding nails in my pockets. I learned to start packing my knitting needles and yarn to refocus the attention of my anxious brain. Especially now, keeping my hands to my mouth is my goal, especially during the pandemic. By creating work addressing the issue, I bring it to the forefront of my mind to begin processing. In this piece, the fingers are stretched into the mouth, which smiles reassuringly. I use nylon tights to address the desire to hide my blemishes from view. Lastly, we have word vomit. It's textiles, mixed metal materials. There is a pandemic at large. We wear masks every day to protect ourselves and others, and we are encouraged to stay home and away from groups of people. Because of this, whenever I do see a friend, I live embarrassed that I've said too much and shared every unwanted detail of my day-to-day. Although this is not actual reality, this is my perception of myself. Too many times have I been overwhelmed and overstimulated, resulting in an outpour of words, trying to be seen and in the moment. I often walk away insecure and wishing I had slowed down my thoughts. Times like these call for reflection, which this piece has offered. The words pour from my mouth and reach to the ground for reflection and growth. And thank you, everyone. That's it. Special thanks is right there. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Kirra. And thank you. I mean, I'm seeing in all the presentations so far how everyone's had to kind of adapt their thinking and their making and their doing and everything with the pandemic. And it's really, you know, creating such beautiful work. So thank you for that very much. And now we have our last student presenter. And then after they present, we'll invite Layla and Kevin to share more responses, and we'll have some more time for that. So now I would like to invite CCA faculty member Brian Conley to introduce our next student artist. Let's see, Brian, are you there? I see you.
I think you're muted.
All right, Brian, can you try again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Good to see everybody. Juan Huerta Queijo artwork reflects his early life in Guayaquil, Ecuador, and surrounding regions. Juan uses a diversity of materials and artistic methods to explore Ecuadorian history and culture. That history has left traces in the present, from its colonial rule by Spain to its role in contemporary global trade. Juan has allowed himself to range over the full expanse of this history in his work. It is not a political analysis or academic interrogation, but an artistic meditation on the interplay of art and life. It is grounded in the experience of life in Ecuador, where these historical traces continue to circulate. They can be found in unsuspecting places, newspapers and magazines, everyday artifacts, Ecuador's colonialist architecture, its Catholicism, and contemporary political discussions. It is a particular challenge to take on such content, not as a historian or journalist, but as an artist working with materials and material culture. Despite the weight of this content, Juan's work is tactile, sensual, and at times even playful. In one project, he displays tourist guides in many languages as compendia of cultural stereotypes. In another, he builds visual constructions using a rhetoric found only in contemporary art to explore the distinctive stickers found on bananas in the supermarket. These have cartoony images, perhaps racist, of happy South American field workers paired with the names of international corporations involved in the harvesting of bananas and their worldwide distribution. This work builds an uncomfortable alliance of corporations involved in the exploitation of local workers, the tourism industry, advertising used as a form of propaganda, and contemporary art. The groundwork of this ambitious idea and its buoyant visual expression has been given initial form during Juan's time at CCA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian, for introducing me. And I want to thank everybody who came to the talk. I want to especially congratulate all my fellow artists and friends, Michonne, Rabeeah, Kirra, and Sungjun. You also like inspire me as much as other contemporary artists inspire me too. Thank you also my mom who's here. Hello, mom. I love you. Okay, so I'm gonna present my work. Okay, so I decided to name my exhibition The Big Sur because I wanted to sort of make a parallel between like the Big Sur as the place, but also talking about the Big South, like the global South or South America. Me personally, I've been drawing since I have memory. Since I was 5 years old, I used to just lay down in the ground, watch cartoons, get my notebook and start drawing. My family was always supportive with my practice. My mom actually bought me my first set of oil paints when I was 9 years old. And I've never stopped making art. I was born in East LA. My mom gave birth to me there. And then as a baby, I went back to Ecuador and I was raised there all my life until I came to college here in the United States. I'm from the city of Guayaquil, which is the main coast city of Ecuador. When I was in middle school, I started apprenticing for a print shop in my hometown of Guayaquil. And I worked with this man named Walter Paez, which had learned printmaking in Cuba. And that was my initiation with printmaking. And that's why I decided to come to school here to pursue a degree in printmaking. I have my artist statement and my press release for my show, but if I had to, like, in a very short sentence, say what my art is about, I will say I try to explore the aesthetics of precariousness and Latin America through its history. I've shown at the Anthropological Museum of Contemporary Art in Ecuador, at the House of Culture in Ecuador, and I've been an artist in residence at Mutual Stores, which is a ceramic residency in Oakland. This one of my biggest inspirations, Jonatas de Andrade, is a Brazilian artist who makes amazing pieces, and Patricia Belli, who is a Honduran artist also. This work that I'm showing is called Infiltrators. And what it looks like is a big sort of kind of minimalist abstract painting. It's kind of long, it's about 7 feet long, but it has these little sort of things that once you get close to it, you can see. And there's like these little figures of like government strikes from Ecuador. There are these little Inca figures that I got from anthropology books, these like supermarket products. So I wanted to create sort of the illusion of like dewdrops in a painting. I have this other series called is like the word for colonial things in German. I have a collection of Ecuadorian touristic guides in many languages, in like French, in German, in English. And I'm fascinated with these elements because I'm interested to see how other countries portray the image of Ecuadorians. And it's really fascinating for me. Like there are these things that say like culture shock, like come see this like different culture. Or I don't know, I saw another tourist guide that had a page that said like pickup lines for Ecuadorian girls or things like that. It's really, really weird and really strange. This is a work that I did with acrylic paint. There's like inkjet printing, and I screw these books into the works. I have a performance that I did with my friend Clara Merson. And the performance, we basically go up a very long set of stairs in a very busy area of San Francisco, carrying up a small rock. And that rock I got from a construction site in downtown Oakland, where they tore down this building and then they built fancy like luxury condos. So I managed to go to the construction site and like save one of the old rocks. And then we sort of like passed it to each other like if it was a baby, in a very like elegant way, up the stairs. And we name it The Promise of Development Brought More Shipwrecks Than Sailors, which is a chapter in a book by Eduardo Galeano called The Open Veins of Latin America that I highly recommend to read. I'll put the link for the video in the chat because it's very long. This is a work that I did with screen print, painting, ink, relief, and thread on a big canvas that I dyed myself. And it's called Basilio and the Uncle. And it has a picture of this mountain that a picture that I took from the southern Andes of Ecuador. And it is a mountain that is known to be haunted because hundreds of miners have died in it. And once you go inside that mountain, this is interesting, but a lot of like mining sites in Ecuador have these sculptures of the devil, because for miners, their way to like pray to God so they don't have any accidents is to pray to the devil, because it is seen as like the devil lives underground and God is like above. This is another work that I have called The Blessing of Genocide, which I try to like see how Catholicism and like the influence of the Catholic Church has excused a lot of like the massive massacres that have occurred in Ecuador in the 70s and the 80s. And it's made out of steel, concrete. There's a little baby Jesus made out of ceramic, and there's a wood box that's made out of gesso and graphite. And this is a detail of how the Jesus look like. This is another work that I have called History of Our Beautiful Ecuador, which is sort of like a timeline in which I found a lot of Ecuadorian magazines from the 60s, and I cut out pieces of it that were really strange. Like some of them show a lot of interest with guns and the military. Other ones show sort of like very sort of hyper masculine like images of like how to be. There is this like article that admires Henry Kissinger. So I just try to like see how a lot of the tragic things that happen today are informed by how public opinion has been shaped over the last 40 years by media, by magazines, by newspapers and all that. So that's why I have all these cutouts and I have these like toy cars attached to it. Like this one says like, what a surprise it was for Christopher Columbus to find a beautiful land like ours, stuff like that. This is a work that I did at the Mutual Stores residency space. I made last year during the Amazon wildfires. And it's a big human-sized map of South America made out of ceramic, being stabbed by branches that I find and I sharpen. So it's sort of like noting burned Amazon forest, but it's also has these sharp tips, which makes it so it's hard to get close to it. You feel like threatened when you get close to this map. And the title of the work is The Wounds of Sights. This is another work that I did called I Will Rain, and it's a mixture of acrylic paint, glitter, there's like ink transfers and relief printing. And I wanted to draw, there's like the shape of South America, and then there's these images of Christianity, like the baby Jesus. There is also these like symbols from Inca cultures. And there is this image of Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes that you see everywhere in my hometown, in buses, in tables, in walls, everywhere. This is another work that I have called Labor Fatigue, in which I wanted to sort of, sorry about that.
Thank you for keeping track of your time. You're at time, but you can finish up.
Sorry. I wanted to sort of like show, I have family in Sacramento who are undocumented. My mother was undocumented for a long time, and that is something that was on my mind a lot at the time. So I wanted to sort of like show how for undocumented families, work is such an important factor of your life that in my feelings, I feel like my family had to sacrifice a lot in order to work. And you sort of like become your work, like become an extension of labor. So I made these pieces in which there are these boots, but instead of being human legs, it's like pieces of wood. There are like plants, this like soil and plants growing in it, these PVC tubes, and these like steel like rebar pieces. This is another work that I did called, it is based on a song by Chilean singer Victor Jara, and it's a bunch of flip-flops that I casted with clay, and I made with clay and sand. So they're sort of like climbing this wall, and that's a better detail of it. But there is like, they're made out of clay, and then the whole outside is like sand. And this is the latest work that I've done right now during the quarantine. I've been collecting an archive, both physical and digital, of banana stickers. And I'm just really fascinated by, like, again, how Ecuadorians are portrayed, you know, by these stickers and like what the stickers say. So what I did is that I painted them with acrylic, big, and I had a bunch of them. So I like tore them apart and then did it like a paste up in a wall. And yeah, it has this very like sort of chaotic composition, and like it shows you how like the images that the outside has of Ecuador, you know. So yeah, that's the latest work that I've done. And yeah, thank you. This is the work that I've done the last 3 years. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you so much, Juan, for sharing your work with us. And I would just like to take a moment right now to kind of collectively thank all of our artists, but particularly Rabeeah and Kirra and Juan, who have just presented their work. I would note we are at time, but that said, you know, these students have worked so hard, and this is their senior capstone work, and we really didn't want to cut anyone off. Our respondents have agreed to stay later so that we can still discuss work by these students. So you are welcome to continue to join us. And you're also welcome to drop any notes of congratulations into the chat. And we will make sure to share that chat with all of the presenting artists after the event. And now, if it's okay, I would like to invite Kevin to respond, and maybe you can choose which student, and we'll make sure that we talk about everyone's work during this time.
Rabeeah, this is for, let me start off the conversation with you. I know that you're in Atlanta now, but when you were living in the Bay Area, did your time out here coincide with the Contemporary Muslim Fashion Show at the De Young Museum?
Yes, it did. I actually sat in on some of those, the meetings that happened prior to the exhibition. And also I was there on the press night as well. I got to see the work before it was released, and it was a wonderful exhibition. There was a lot of wonderful work that was curated, a lot of people that I know personally, a lot of friends' artwork and designs were in there as well.
Oh, great. I mean, You know, I think you have just such an incredibly bright future ahead of you. It's just making sure that you've got those really savvy business skills in hand, in addition to your creative skills. Um, you know, seeing the newest work that you did, it reminds me a lot of, do you know this conceptual artist, Andrea Zattel?
No, I don't.
So she has an entire project that is dealing with every single facet of simplifying and minimalizing distractions within life. So a lot of her practice you could describe as sculpture, as social practice, but I would definitely look into the way that Andrea Zattel approaches clothing and the functionality of clothing and the way that she actually designs it within the overall scope of her aesthetic worldview. I think you would find a lot of resonances, especially with what you had just showed us. And are you also familiar with the designer who's also based in the Bay Area, Hushidara, House of Hushi?
I'm not familiar with that artist.
I will send information to Jamie to forward on to you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And Kirra, some artists that actually came to mind from seeing your presentation, just Beatrice Cortez, a lot of her large sculptures. And there was actually an artist who just graduated, I believe, last year from CCA with their MFA, Jordan Hartney.
Oh, I think you're still muted, Kirra. Perfect.
Okay. I don't know either of those people, but I will look them up.
Yeah, Jordan, I believe, just graduated this past spring with their MFA from the program at CCA. A lot of resonances between artistic sculptural forms and functional jewelry that is wearable on different parts of the body. I think you would find a lot of resonances there. And for some reason, the performance artist Ron Athey kind of came to mind when I was seeing your work as well. And then Juan, fantastic stuff. You obviously have the mind of a printmaker, and it's very, very encouraging to see the way that you're thinking not about individual isolated projects, but you are already thinking in terms of series and you're thinking sequentially. That's a really smart thing to do. I had a couple of questions about especially the work where you're screwing in the Ecuadorian either travel maps or travel books into the paintings of Disney characters. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I wanted to create that sort of like frustration that you cannot move them or open them. And also like it's just like these books are so sort of like funny and ridiculous for me at least, but for someone in Germany or like the Netherlands who's trying to visit Ecuador, it's like, whoa, this is like interesting, so like I wanted to like put these cartoons to sort of show that ridiculousness, and that sort of like mindset that a lot of people have when thinking about Ecuador or South America in general.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin, for those reflections, and maybe we'll pass it over to Layla to share some of her responses.
Yeah, thank you. I'll go in order as well. Rabeeah Ali, right? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Rabeeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I often find that in textile and garment work, there exists some kind of underlying or implied violence, and maybe it's because fabric often speaks to the presence of a metropole or an empire in some way. And I'm wondering if you've read the book Migratude by Shalja Patel.
No, I haven't. I'm going to be taking note of that.
Yeah, it's almost like poetry. It's like a poetic essay where she explores the history of Paisley and the migration patterns through Kenya and India and the UK. And also something that came up while you were presenting your work is this way that, especially in your pillows, there's this shifting of the status of art object from, or an art form from an object-based commodity to this more participatory experience, and how bodies bring value to object through their memories and experiences of it. And it reminded me a lot of Shilpa Gupta's work, where she has these large scale installations where there's a lot of repetition, and there are a lot of objects being pierced. And also Jiddish Kalat, who incorporates patterns found within the landscape to represent a lot of hair and movement in his print work and assemblage work. Kirra, really love the jewelry and the metalworking. There's a place for me where jewelry and objects meet this strange place of adornment, costume, and like bondage that is really interesting. And I would say there's also a way that jewelry making always speaks to the body, even in the body's absence, which I think you're really getting at. And for me, when I think of different metal objects, I always think about the sensorial implications, like what they smell like, the temperature, the sound, and the taste. I'm curious if you've thought about all of the different sensorial moments happening in your work, and like if you consider sound and smell and taste at all. You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. I do, and I think that's kind of why I chose to create a photo shoot or something with them in such a kind of vulnerable state, in order to try to express that that interaction with the pieces. And I feel like I will continue only to just be able to show that even more. There's such a desire for me to put pieces in my mouth and stuff, just because it's the experience for me is so tactile that I totally resonate with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always obsessed with how you can make an audience feel the all of the sensorial responses that may be happening for you while you're making it. And I was thinking a lot about local artist Cadet Kuhn's work, who's a filmmaker and does a lot with bondage and rope and things like that. And also Marcus Schinwald, whose work it's mostly painting, but there's a lot of face coverings, and there are these moments where bodies merge with matter in this really interesting way, and similar to the ways that you had this extension of body parts happening. And also strangely, maybe not so strangely, but Melvin Edwards' work, who references these identifiable African-American histories through these really sometimes violent metal objects as well. And anyway, congratulations, really beautiful work. And Juan, or you rather go by JJ, is that right?
No, Juan is okay.
Juan, okay. Yeah, congrats to you as well. I really love this trajectory that you're on, and the ways that you're studying patterns and parallel cultural histories. An artist that came up for me was, or maybe they're a duo. It's and I might mispronounce their names, but Basil Abbas and Ruan Abu Rami. And they are primarily video artists, but they really think about the politics of desire and disaster. And there's a lot of text in their work that I think, may lend itself to the ways that you're thinking about all of these different ways that Ecuadorian culture is represented in all of these different images and patterns. And also Lawrence Abu Hamdan, who's a sound artist from Jordan. And there's this way that he considers sound as evidence and cultural residue. And I see that you're working in so many different mediums and objects and materials. So I think almost instantly an artist that came to mind was another local artist, Mildred Howard, who uses a lot of mixed media and assemblage work. She uses a lot of common everyday objects specifically, similarly to you. And there's this way in which she uses objects in multiplicity specifically to address, racial injustice. But more importantly, there's something that happens in that multiplicity where there's a compassion built into a particular narrative that I really see resonating with your work as well. And maybe lastly, Julio Cesar Morales, who studied at SFAI here in the Bay Area. I don't think he's currently in the Bay Area, but he has this series of watercolors where he's documenting conditions of migration, and he's reimagining the possibilities of labor and different kinds of movement when we think about like the ways that specifically Mexican bodies have to travel over borders.
Thank you, Lila.
Thank you so much, Layla and Kevin, for your generosity and for all of your reflections. I'm also happy to collect information about some of the references that were made and share them out with the artists or connect you directly so that you as artists can focus on your time. We'll pull together the information from you. But if everyone could just join me first, let's thank Kevin and Layla for joining us tonight and sharing your reflections. Thank you, thank you. And then very importantly, let's come together and do a collective pause. And I'll say all of the artists' names, and then maybe if you're willing, we can unmute and clap and cheer and just really celebrate the work of Michonne Sanders, Sungjun Park, Rabeeah Ali, Kirra Helfritsch, and Juan Huerta. Woo!
Congratulations.
Congratulations, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our BFA Thesis Conversations event. Thank you for celebrating the work of these wonderful graduating artists at CCA. And stay safe out there. And thank you for everyone who participated. This was a really lovely event, and I feel honored to have learned so much about each of your work. So thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.